start to bounce. And finally, when you are expanding your jaws, you need to feel and you need to listen. You're listening for any type of cracking, right? Because as you're expanding those jaws, you're putting a lot of pressure on that wood. I'm trying to get you back in my tripod here. You're putting a lot of pressure on this outer ring. So this one, the way I designed it, is a tenon and a mortise. So it's the mortise inside the tenon. So there's not a lot of strength right here. So as I'm expanding, I need to be listening for those little cracks that might be popping up in there. And then I know, uh-oh, it's time to reset. And that's where you don't want to get in a hurry. It's better to reset, come at something again, and do it right, rather than, oh, I think I just heard a little crack, but it'll be all right. And then when things go wrong on a lathe, if you haven't experienced it yet, you will. They go wrong fast. It's not like you're going to catch it in the air and throw it back up, right? It's slung against the wall. It's somewhere. So it goes wrong fast. So any questions about it? Go ahead.
You have to think about it. If it kisses you, it's going to kiss you goodbye.
That's it. It happens so quick. Okay. We didn't really talk about mounting things between centers, and I think we'll skip that for another day unless there's somebody that really wants to get into it. But the last one I really want to go over tonight, this is probably my primary method of doing things. I've really just taken a liking to it, and that is starting off with a worm screw. So, well, let me show you from the beginning. So the worm screw will come with most chucks. If you buy a chuck kit of any kind, there's usually a worm screw in there. Otherwise, just figure out what worm screw goes with your chuck. So that bad boy just sets right into the jaws. Make sure it seats in there properly. You were probably just looking at the back of my head.
You may want to mention that those screws are hardened, that if you try it with a lag bolt from the hardware store, we might read a bunch in the paper.
Yeah, not a good idea. Okay, so depending on whatever worm screw you're using, will depend on, it'll tell you what size drill bit that you need to make your pilot hole with. So in my case, I believe mine's a 3/8. So I've already drilled it, and you can see the hole. How do I do that? For me, I do it on my drill press. I just have a little bench top. So from here, hopefully, you bring that closer. So what I have done, I have my one drill bit because I use the worm screw so much that I've taped it off with blue tape. So I know exactly how far I need to go for my worm screw every time. Okay. And now my arm's in your way. So imagine the drill is on, the drill press is on, boom, back it out, put it in, back it out, put it in. So you get yourself a nice clean cut and go to the depth that you need to go. So mine's marked right there. All right.
Doug, while you're there, that was a natural edge piece on the other side, a rough log. You could, at this point, when you get ready to drill a hole, you could shim that piece left, right, up, and down, or back and forth, and you can shim it until that hole's going in on the axis that you want to turn the piece. So if you have a very irregular face on it, you'd like to keep that face, then you shim it up until where you can get it there. That's the beauty of the worm screw start.
So if there's anybody that's not understanding what he's saying, so a shim of whatever kind, this would not be a real shim because it's a piece of bark, but you're shimming it to get this thing to, one, sit at the flat angle wherever flat is going to be for you, and it takes the wobbles out when you're trying to bring down your drill press. Can it be done with a hand drill? Yes. If you don't have a drill press, it's not the end of the world. Doesn't mean you can't use a worm screw. Just the drill press speeds things up and gets it more exact. With the hand drill, you're going to be, it's going to be as straight as you make it. or as crooked as you make it, where the drill press, it's going to go straight in every time. Now it's just a matter of, did you set your piece of wood flat or not? Okay, so we take it back over to the lathe. If you watch YouTube, you are going to see a lot of guys. My shield go. You will see a lot of guys, gals, flip their lathe on. Did I not? Oh, I didn't tighten that back down after we. That could have been a disaster. Send the worm screw across the floor. They will turn the lathe on, and they'll put their piece of wood on, and it'll suck it right on. I can guarantee you that will work every time. What I can also guarantee you is if you turn that lathe faster than you can hold it, you've probably just yanked your arm under there. You've just created a major safety hazard for yourself. Major safety hazard. Is there a way that you can do it where it is safe? Depends on the lathe that you have. So when in doubt, just put the thing on there by hand. It's not that difficult. Let me get the camera over here so you can see it better. Where did you go? Okay, got the worm screw here, and the hole goes on, right? And then all I'm gonna do, hold it and turn it by hand. Put some pressure on there. Get it started. Now, I'm fortunate enough, my lathe has a locking device on it, and now I can just work it on there, work it on there, work it on there. Okay, get it up there till I got a nice tight fit. If you are insistent on the lathe doing the work for you, that wasn't supposed to happen. If you are insistent on the lathe doing it for you, I am not encouraging you in any way to use the lathe, but I'm going to tell you this. Put the lathe at its absolute slowest setting. So mine already is. I can turn this lathe on to where it is all the way down to about 40 RPM. If I was to put that piece of wood on there and it sucked it up tight, I would actually stop the lathe. It doesn't take a lot of strength to stop it at 40 RPM. So there's nothing going to pull my arm under. If you don't have a lathe that goes that slow, I am begging you, please just put it on by hand. Please just put it on by hand. Otherwise, you're just asking for a disaster. So we covered a lot of stuff. Again, this is my preferred starting point for bowls. My preferred method for goblets is a tenon. With my bowls, I will start off with the worm screw and I work the bottom of the bowl as we always do first. And then my preferred method is a recess or a mortise to reverse chuck it with. I have done it plenty of times with tenons. I just don't like the extra step of then having to take the tenon off. If you only have a faceplate, that does not mean you can't make bowls. So going back to this one, if I only have a faceplate, I can complete a bowl without any holes in it. How does that happen? I will put the faceplate on here. I will turn my bowl. I have to know the length of my screws, so I can figure out how far into my bowl blank those screws are, and then I just need to part it off ahead of those screws. And you can complete a bowl that way. Does it make doing the backside of the bowl a lot harder? Of course it does, but it's not impossible. So don't think you can't turn a bowl until you have a chuck. You absolutely can. I did not own a chuck for a long time. I did everything off of Facebook. So if anybody's got any questions, we can take them now. Otherwise, if Mark is back and wants to help us out more with the tapered versus a ball, we can go there.
Okay. When you're making a recess, let me see. Am I on the deal here?
Yep, you're back on now.
I'm getting you there.
Okay.
I'm getting you there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
When you're making a recess, I'm going to hold this up. You can make a simple tool, right? Because if you have a bowl blank here and you have your tailstock over here, right? When you put the tool up and you try to make an angle back, because I have a dovetail on my jaws, then the tailstock gets in the way over here, right? The tailstock is in the way. So I put the tool rest in like this. The bowl blank is here. So with this tool, you can see what I've done. I've just ground an old scraper off, right? And what I've created, this has a little taper down here because the top's going to be the cutting edge. On the top, this comes down, and this is a right angle right here. This is a right angle, right? But this angle out here, right, is a 7-degree difference because my jaws have a 7-degree dovetail. So that means that I can just hold it on the tool rest like this, right? The tailstock doesn't get in the way, and all I've got to do is just go in, and that automatically makes the 7 degrees, and it automatically controls the depth. Here on this side, it controls the depth of the cut. So it's a no-brainer. I make a recess, I just go in, zip, zip, and I can go forward, take it out, it's done. And it's always exactly perfect every time for my jaws.
And you can do that out of those cheeky tools that you probably got in one of those kits someplace. Don't throw them away. They're still tools still, but you can regrind them like this and save them. I've got one just like you're talking about. And mine came out of a 1/2-inch scraper from, I don't know, G2 or whatever. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
Okay,
Eddie, I use, I don't need to see it, man.
there
I
you
got
go.
you now, Johnny.
That's
Get
what
you
I
up there
use.
again.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same principle, same thing. It just,
Yep. That's the safest way to do it.
And you don't
I have a
to.
question.
Hold on. Who's there?
I'm sorry.
Is that you, Kim?
Yes, it is. I just had a question about when is an appropriate time or not appropriate time to use a mortise or tenon. So through my experience, putting a mortise in grain has never really worked out well for me. And it wasn't until I created more cracks than I could handle that I learned that. So I'm just wondering, because I've never looked into it, is there a rule of thumb for beginners? Because a lot of times people do spindle work, just so anybody knows, this is end grain, this is side grain. This is just a cut little log. And a mortise is cutting in, and then the tenon is having it sticking out. So is there anybody who could clarify when is a good time, or when is it not a good time to use a mortise? Maybe I should just
Can I speak to that? Can I speak to that?
Yes, sir, you can. You got it right now. Go ahead.
Okay. I will guarantee you that everybody that's watching tonight that's put a tenon on a side grain bowl at one time or another has put extra leverage out by the rim and has sheared off the tenon on a side grain bowl. So on side grain work, I always use the recess. On end grain work, I always use the tenon. That's simple, and I never have to think about it.
me too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And, that's what we're here for, folks, is to share these ideas and these thoughts. And you can't get this out of a notebook anyplace. Doug was talking about the depth of or the length of the tenon or the depth of the mortise. and I was watching a YouTube today of a guy doing a bowl, and as soon as he chucked it up, I thought, yeah, you're not paying attention to the physics. The bottom of the bowl was not regular, wasn't flat. The bottom of the piece wasn't flat. And he cut a tenon on it about 3/4 of an inch long.
Oh,
And then
no.
he stuck it, yeah, you know where I'm going. Then he stuck it in that chuck and tightened it down. Now, when he started turning, he could make it even. But you got to think about when that piece on the bottom was bearing on the irregular surface of that chuck, he didn't have a good hold.
No.
And he wasn't holding with the bearing surface whatsoever. And the bearing surface is the one that bears it out. And that's what should bear on your tenon, the rim by your tenon, and the rim of your mortise. That surface is extremely critical. And if it's not exactly flat, when you put it on, you say, well, mine's got a bump. They make tools for straightening it out. They call them files. And you can true that back up again or clean it. We also had a guy, and I put his name here and I lost it. He said, what about dovetail jaws over serrated jaws or barbed jaws? Can I get an opinion on that? Oh, you're not talking, huh?
Well,
I like the dovetail.
Was that Johnny?
Yeah, I like the dovetail there. That's on this bowl here. That recess is 1/8 of an inch in there.
Yeah.
And that's all you need with a dovetail to hold that bowl up.
correct.
Because you don't have those ridges to deal with.
I like the dovetail. I went and bought the dovetail jaws that One Way makes and replaced the ones.
I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong one. I was looking for Trey. I think I was looking for Trey.
I like dovetail better because the serrated ones, if you're not careful, if you try to grip it on the edge, actually the jaws sometimes will push it away from instead of pulling it into.
I did the same. I had all the serrated versions they could possibly make, and when I first turned with the dovetail, I put them all in a box, put them on the shelf. I got a good collection of them out there.
On my
I would
one-way jaws, on my one-way jaws that have the little serrations on the outside, I closed the jaws, turned it on the lathe, and I took a bastard file and I took those little serrations off so that I have a pure dovetail, right, on the outside grip. And it worked just absolutely fine. And when I turn around something like for like a tea light candle or something like that, you can expand those jaws in there, and guess what? They don't mark up the wood. So I prefer the dovetail on a recess, and the little serrations are fine on a tenon. You know, doesn't make
I'd
any-
like to add something to that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Kim. There you
Okay,
are.
so on the Nova jaws, for like the Supernova, at least that's what I have, and the other one, the 35th anniversary, I don't remember what they call it. Anyways, for the
G3.
55, yes, the G3, thank you. The 50 millimeter jaws, I don't know how well y'all can see that.
Looks
The
good.
outside, so if I were to make a mortise with these jaws, I would do a dovetail. The inside is not dovetailed. You can see it is not angled. It is not a dovetail for a tenon. And it's funny because I didn't realize this until not too long ago, because I just always assumed, because I could see on the outside it's dovetailed, so I assumed it was dovetailed on the inside as well. So that's just the 50 millimeter jaws. All the other ones that are larger are dovetailed inside and outside. So in other words, you would put a dovetail for a mortise and a tenon, but on the 50 millimeter jaws, there is actually a lip right here that grips on the inside. So this technically does have like a 1 tooth,
Right.
and you do not put, it is not shaped like a dovetail. And
Well,
someone brought that to my attention on YouTube, and I was like, wow, okay. So, I mean, I guess you could still I guess you could, I mean, I had been putting dovetails on my tenons, and using these jaws, and it was just fine because it kind of pulls, it's designed so it pulls towards the chuck. That's why the bottom of your piece needs to be extremely flat. That is what makes the contact, the top part here and the bottom of your piece. But I didn't read the manufacturer's instructions because, who needs instructions? I just wanted to point that out, that is not dovetailed.
Isn't there a little bit of dovetail on that ring though?
Only it kind of makes it look like it because it's on the outside, but it is not on the inside. You can make a straight tenon. I thought so, and I fought with this guy over YouTube about it. I'm like, I am so sure that that's dovetail, and I sure enough went out there and looked, and it is not. The insides of the larger ones, see the difference? Mm-hmm. Let me put this one up. See the difference? That is dovetailed. That is not. That is straight.
And that's not a one-way product, right?
No, this is Nova.
Nova.
So
okay.
just those Novichok owners, I didn't know it until not too long ago. So in case someone else didn't know it, I just like to bring that up. So that way you can correctly put your mortise or tenon or your tenons on there. I'm not sure, maybe one of you guys will know if it makes a difference, if it's a straight jaws, like the grip jaws, and you make a dovetail on it. I don't know.
I worry about the pressure of holding it. And I want to throw in when Mark was talking about how well a dovetail, the dovetail grips and holds when you don't want to put marks on it. I'm not supposed to say I put a piece of toilet paper over it. Because folks will say that's unsafe. But you don't have so much of a thickness, but you don't put any metal track on the piece if it moves a little bit, because it's all going to move. Wood moves. So if you put a piece of toilet paper on that chuck when you put that piece on, you're weakening the grip this way, but not the grip like this. At least I don't believe you are. I haven't had a problem with it, but maybe I'll have to find somebody that writes a book on it. So, all right, anybody else up for a gallery tonight? Or tips and hints on chucking? Remember the deal. If you can hold it, you can cut it.
Eddie, we got some questions in the comments about some stuff. So let's take a look at these questions real quick. We got never use a faceplate on end grain. I would agree with that. And if you're not understanding why, again, it has to do with the weakness of the fibers when you're on the end grain. While it's spinning, it's not so much of an issue, but when it comes to a fast stop, that's where you're going to have the issues. You get a catch, something like that, those grain fibers are going to tear, those screws are going to loosen up, and things are going to start to wobble on you pretty fast. So that's whoever said that. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm having a hard time reading the small names in there.
That was from Dick Mueller.
Okay, and then we got, when using a worm screw, blank half flat for a flat like for a faceplate or not necessary. It's going to be a lot better if it is. I'll go ahead and I'll run this one all the way up, and then I'll show you guys that it's not flat. It's at a point where I would feel safe turning it. Again, a lot of it comes down to where do you feel safe at? How can you fix that? You would, again, you could use your drill press with a larger Forstner bit that's larger than your jaws. So then it will screw up tight. A lot of times when you're playing around something that's not a store-bought blank, or like I do, just grab wood out of the wood pile, things aren't going to be perfect. You're going to have to play around and figure out how it's safest for you. What it comes down to with me is I don't want any wobble on anything. So Eddie, if you want to put me back up now, I'll show you how no wobble on this one, and I'll also show that it's not perfectly flat.
You're on spotlight, buddy.
Okay, so first off, I'm always start off with my tailstock when I'm using a worm screw, because that worm screw, you saw it, it's just a tiny little piece of metal in there. It's not really holding a lot. They are pretty strong, but not enough for me to rely on it all by itself, especially when I'm first starting off and things are anything but round. Now, if we come over here to the jaw side, let me see if I got that in there. Can you all see that? So as we turn, there's the gap. I'm going to take you off the tripod. It's going to shake for a second. Okay. There's the gap right in there. But
Wow, you
there's
can throw a cat through there.
There's my where I have solid connection. You're going to have solid connection on two sides. And there's my solid connection. Otherwise, you've just created a fulcrum and it's going to twist on you. But if I try to shake this in any way, there's no play in this whatsoever, none. So that's what makes me feel safe turning it. That again is where I have to constantly be checking things to make sure that everything is good to go. So we'll shield up here for a second. We'll stand out of the line of fire. Turn the lathe on. You're not on the tripod, so let me see where you're at. And here we go.
Now, he does have the tailstock making contact now.
Absolutely. I would never turn that on without the tailstock up there.
He's technically between points, which is a critical thing for almost everything you start turning.
So from right there, I would be perfectly comfortable putting in a tool rest and then starting to work the bottom of my piece, starting to work it round, and then get to the point where I would feel comfortable either starting to make the mortise or the tenon. At some point, the tailstock's got to come back so you can get all the way to the center. You're not going to pull that tailstock away until you know that there's no wobble without the tailstock. The only way to test that is get yourself out of the line of fire, turn your speed all the way down, turn the lathe back on, slowly bring the speed up. If the speed gets to the point where you know you can get back to getting a good slice, then you're good to go. So I think we covered just about everything. But again, if there's more questions, by all means, throw them out there. And you got enough experts, people way smarter than me in this club right now that can help you out.
All right, Doug, and we very much appreciate your input this evening, helping us with this project. And folks, you're invited to be part of this. If you want to do a program or a presentation, you saw Doug had that was his iPhone, and he was out there on that shaky damn tripod he has. But and I got two of them right here. He was on his iPhone to produce this, and you can do it too. And we're looking to get that done. A couple of things. We're going to wrap this up in 9 minutes at 8:30. And there won't be any extended session. I have to shut everything down tonight, technical problems. But I want to mention again that we now have the Worldwide Woodturners decals, and they're available. And I think I can put the site up, the address up there, where you can get them at. Yeah, here it comes. There it is. My address is right in the middle of that. It's Eddie Castellan, 330 Highway Drive, Jefferson, Louisiana. And the deal is that the stickers cost me $1 each, and then it cost me $1 to mail them. So I'll give you one sticker for $2, two for $3, three for $4 until you get tired. No credit card. It has to be cash or check. And if you move me a check, make it out to Eddie Castellan, not to Worldwide Woodturners. By the bank standards, we don't exist. So that's where you can get them at. I've got 100 of them to do and sell out, and then we'll probably look at a different style of version or something later on or improve it. You never can tell. And remind you again that if you've been watching this program, there's a ton, and I mean a ton, I waited, of information on the chat line. If you want to save that information, and it's all there, and it all prints out, right now, go to your chat button. At the bottom of the chat where it says who to send it to, on the right-hand side at the bottom is a little square with 3 light dots, 3 very light dots. Click on that. The top line will say Save Chat. If you click Save Chat, everything we've spoken about from here to the beginning of the program, everybody will be on that Save Chat. Now, if you do that when you get started, you're not going to get anything. So if you want to save the chat, put it on your website, put it on your computer, and you go back to it. I mean, we've got folks out there telling us chuck sizes, chuck manufacturers about the Neji and engraver, using lollipop sticks to see what angle the cutter is. That's a trick I used when I was demonstrating in my shop at night. If you put a lollipop stick across the flute of the gouge, that's for you to watch. You can see that if I turn it or if I keep it vertical, if I do a rough cut or I do a Mark Soleil cut. That's what I'm calling it. Okay, it makes the biggest difference in the world because gouges are not supposed to be plows. Anybody else got anything? We got about 5 minutes, and let's get to you right now.
Got a quick tip there on the chucks. I usually leave about 1/8 of an inch opening in the chuck jaws, and that allows me to take the caliper, stick it into the chuck jaws, and see how much bottom I have left in there. Because when you get down to where you have the mortise there, it's a lot thinner than the rest of it. That's what it
Great
is.
tip. It's a great tip, Johnny.
With
Yeah.
1/8 of an inch, do it.
Jerry, that's almost cheating.
What's that?
And Kim, that's almost cheating. And,
Yeah.
You know, all right. And I got one here for Kim. We had a couple of mentions on the chat thing about reading the instructions. There's a whole bunch of us that think you shouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, we should read the instructions.
Yes, it's that paper that comes with the stuff you buy a lot of times.
I also want to give a word of advice on Forstner bits. And I had someone message me earlier today on how to mount something that was mostly resin. First of all, if you use a faceplate, you have to pre-drill resin in order to get the screws to fit. And even then, sometimes that's scary because the resin likes to crack. So if you can do wormwood screw, or that would be usually the best anyways. Just do what you feel safe as far as resin goes. But she messaged me and said that she was going to have her husband hold the piece while she took her hand drill with a Forstner bit. Never. And don't ask me how I know. I got to see what my bone and my finger looks like because I decided to hold on to a piece and use my Forstner bit. Thank God that was not on camera, but just don't ever hold a piece. I don't think Forstner bits should ever be used with a hand drill, especially if you're using your hands to hold the piece. Use clamps. Please, for the love of God, don't slice your finger open like I did and see what the inside of your bones look like. Just a warning, because some people don't know how Forstner bits are. They're just now using them as new wood turners, and yeah.
All right, thank you. And by the way, folks, if something like that happens to you, we don't want to see the video. We don't want to see the photographs. You can tell us all about it, but don't want to see it. A couple of rules: be sweet, be kind, be fair, be human, but don't show me that. I've seen enough of mine and other people's that I don't really need to appreciate a wound. And that's the first way to get unfriended with me on Facebook, is show me that, you know, you got a wound and this, hey, look, this is what it looks like, you know, all busted. I don't need to see that. I don't know if you do, but I don't need to see that. I'm looking through the notes here. We still want input, still want your ideas. If you'd like to do a presentation or a demonstration for us, just get in touch with us. Our email address is worldwidewoodturners@gmail.com. And our website is now available, and it is www.worldwidewoodturners.org. Catch that .org thing, worldwidewoodturners.org, and we'll have a lot of information there. And if you haven't saved the chat, save it. If you want to see the video, the repeat of this on video, I will get it posted to probably YouTube tomorrow or Thursday. Tomorrow is Thursday. It will get posted to YouTube, and it will go to Dave for him to put it on the website, and we'll be adding it to our website in case you need to get a recap of this. And we'll also put a recap of the chat program there also. Anything else this evening, folks?
Yeah, Eddie, so I want to throw an idea out there to the club. This is something you were doing on your YouTube channel a while back. Shop tours. If we could get a volunteer each week, I don't care if you move the car out of the garage and that's your workshop, if you have a small little cubby hole, or if your workshop is bigger than the Taj Mahal. There's something that you have done in your workshop that somebody with a similar workshop would love to know. And if we could just get a quick tour of somebody's shop every week, here's where I placed my lathe, here's where I placed my bandsaw, here's the type of tool rack I use. It would be pretty cool. Dane Chandler and I were talking over Facebook the other day, and he was showing me a really cool tool rack, and he also posted some pictures on our Facebook page. And it was really cool to see his idea. I would have never thought of something like that. And I think we have we had close to 90 members on here tonight, I think, the last time I looked. So somebody in your shop somewhere has done something that I would love to know about. So there's my suggestion. If we could get at least one person every week to give us a shop tour, again, I don't care what size shop you have, because somebody else has that similar size shop.
Yeah, you're right. When we first started Worldwide Woodturners, we did a little thing through the newsletter because we didn't have Zoom at the time. We did, and we wanted you to show us your shop. And it wasn't. We won't use your last name if you choose. We won't give you address. We won't send Bubba over there to get any tools. All we want to do is see what ideas you came up with. We had a couple of weeks ago about a guy that did the vacuum chuck on the end of his lathe. He made a little cabinet for that and all of his spurs and gizmos and gadgets. And if I had room, I'd have one because I did essentially the same thing. I built the metal rack to hold them on, and I've got my post on my big lathe that's got spurs on it or legs on it to hold my chucks, and so they're handy. Not that you need to immediately get to a chuck, but hey, it's handy. Doug, I got one here. Carl Geary said, is there a rule of thumb to gauge how big a piece of wood you can turn on a worm screw?
Well, I haven't found too big yet, so I don't know. I would probably be more concerned with too small if I was drilling out a hole and now there wasn't enough meat there to hold anything. With the worm screw, what's making it work is really the tailstock, right? So it's very similar to turning between centers. It's just instead of two little points, you've got that worm screw going in and giving you that extra strength. I don't know if somebody's got a better answer than what I have. But I've turned some pretty big pieces where I've started off with the worm screw first.
You were pretty much at max size on what you had there because it's limited to how big your diameter of your piece.
Or your lathe. So the swing on my lathe is 24 inches, right? So there's 12 inches between my bed and my center, and then so 12 inches on top. That's the maximum piece of wood I'm going to put on there.
Thank you, Doug. All right. Anybody else this evening? Because we're about to say goodnight, folks. This has been an extremely nice visit with you. All right, say it again.
Eddie, I'll say one thing on that woodworm screw. If I'm turning a 20-inch, piece on my Powermatic, right, 19 or whatever, then I put the woodworm screw in and the chuck with the large jaws on it. That gives me a little bit more support for the larger piece of wood. If it's a smaller piece, I can use the number 2 jaws or whatever. That's
good idea. Good tip.
You can also use a spacer if you want to do platters.
That's
and
correct.
Shorten the depth that the worm screw goes in. Just don't be too stingy, and don't think that because 3 threads work in steel, it'll work in wood. It won't.
Yeah, I couldn't go to the shop and get you mine, but I've got them in 3, 4, 5, 6-inch sizes with a 3/8 hole in the middle for slipping it right on there and get a good bearing plate. I did that years ago. I made mine out of masonite, but it still worked. It gave me a bearing surface. All right. Dane Chandler says he's going to volunteer for next week, which is good. We'll get him in here. And we've got a lot on the chat tonight, folks, but it's that time. We've had an enjoyable 2 hours tonight, I believe. We put out a lot of information. I want to thank all of our contributors that got involved. Thank you, Doug. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Kim, and Billy, and Dick, and all the other folks. I could go through the list forever. But remember this, it is your club. And if you want to have something unique, you want to change something, you want to get rid of something, we have an email address. We have a website. We have a way for you to contact us, and we'd love to hear from you and get you involved. It's your club. I can never say it enough. It's your club. With that, folks, I'm going to say good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, if nothing else, be safe.
Thanks, Eddie.
Good night, everyone.
I won't be here next week, so I'll miss y'all next week. Your tax dollars are paying me to go do some training, but I'll be here the week after.
Thanks for the demo.
You betcha.
Good night, all.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Eddie, I think the biggest number I saw tonight was 84.
84, that's pretty good.
That's a good number. I can work with that. I can work with 2.
You bet.
Only if it's Steve and Doug. You know, I got to clarify. I got to clarify that.
Yeah, there's good chats tonight.
Be safe, Doug.
Thanks, you too.